Designing science and technology facilities is one of the more complex project types in our profession. It really takes a great team of people to look at how all the different systems come together to support the science that goes on in these spaces. The complexity of the buildings involving mechanical, electrical systems and plumbing systems that have to be tied into a client's equipment or technology that they use in their space becomes a greater challenge and an opportunity for greater solutions. It's really about collaboration and coordination more so in that project type. And we also look at how we can be more effective with these projects, particularly with the fact that they are using tons of energy. So we have to be very energy efficient in terms of the things that we come up with, the solutions, energy reclaim, and how that all relates to the systems that they need to put into their facility.
A lot of it has to do with the number of meetings. You really have to understand how many times you need to get in front of an owner. You need to prepare for those meetings. There's an assimilation between meetings that has to occur in order to advance each of those topics. You don't want to talk about paint color when you haven't selected, the planning or the relationships. And so there's a real process there that comes into play. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with science and technology. The other part of it would be the language. The language of architecture, the language of design is graphical. We put our ideas down on paper and we communicate that way. Well, with the science, there's also vocabulary. And when you talk about a hood, somebody will say a hood. Well, that can be a fume hood. It can be a laminar airflow hood. A biological safety cabinet is commonly referred to as a hood. Sometimes it's just a canopy over the top of an autoclave to capture steam. So you got to ask clarifying questions almost on every turn to make sure you understand what they're talking about. Because their vocabulary may be different than the previous project you worked on, or even your own, and gaining that clarity is real important. And then documenting it, obviously, is an important piece so everybody understands what you've talked about, what you've decided, because these decisions always build on each other. That's probably more common with most projects, but in science and technology, it's probably just a little bit more. Well, what do you want to do with it? And there's a birthing process with a building. I mean, when architects and engineers design a building, we really have the end state in mind. But there's a process of taking an existing building to a future state. And that process can influence both the design, the system selections. There's a way of getting from A to B. And so knowing what you want to do and talking about that, and then how you get there. And so bringing that contractor involved early, listening to the architect. You may have some needs, wants, and desires, but the building just doesn't want to get there easy. And that's a challenge. So for owners, trying to consider a renovation project is really understanding what the building can afford and doing that assessment very early and a very, very quick, high-level planning exercise, if you will, and say, is this a good fit for the building?
When a science and technology-based client is looking to renovate their facility, they really need to be forward-thinking in where they may want to go with that facility. How can they incorporate flexibility into the design solutions? Technology is changing faster than anybody can see into the future. And in my career, I've seen so many things change in the last 30 years in science and tech facilities that it's become more and more complex, and really having them understand the impact of their equipment in the space is important. More so than anything. Years ago, we would design laboratories for the lab tech who would be working at a bench doing some simple routines, and now it's about the instrumentation and the technology that goes into the lab, that the clients who understand that really well can support their the business solution a lot easier and come up with a greater project in the end.